Have you ever made a man feel something so deep that it keeps him awake? Not from pain or breakup, but from a strange pull in his chest he can't explain? Not because you did something dramatic, not because of some perfect line, but because something in you reached a part of him he usually keeps hidden. This is not about chasing attention or trying to act different. It's about the shift where you stop being just someone he talks to and become someone he can't quite forget. Men hear compliments all the time. They get messages, likes, attention everywhere, but very rarely do they feel truly understood in a way that hits their inner world. And that's where everything changes. There is a kind of presence that doesn't shout, doesn't force, but still changes the atmosphere when it enters. Stay with me here because this is where most people miss the point. It is not about being louder, prettier, or more available. It is about how your energy lands inside his mind when you are not even trying. Imagine him lying in bed, phone in hand, replaying a small moment with you, not even sure why it feels different. That's the effect we are talking about. And once you understand this, you stop chasing reactions and start shaping memory. Keep watching because this gets deeper. It's not about touching his body first, it's about touching his attention in a way that makes him slow down inside. Desire doesn't always begin with closeness. Sometimes it begins with space, with what is not fully given. Most people think connection grows when you give more, reply faster, explain everything, stay constantly available. But that often removes the tension that actually keeps curiosity alive. Think of a moment where something almost happens, like a conversation that pauses right before a big confession. That pause stays longer in memory than the words themselves. This is where emotional pull starts. When everything is too available, the mind stops reaching. But when there is a little space, a little mystery, he starts filling in the gaps himself. And what the mind creates on its own becomes much stronger than anything directly said. So instead of rushing to define everything, sometimes you let moments breathe. You don't over-explain, you don't chase clarity too fast, you let him lean in mentally. Stay with this because the next part will change how you see silence completely. Silence is not emptiness, it is direction. A calm presence can speak louder than constant effort. In a world where everyone is trying to be noticed, the person who stays steady naturally stands out. It's not about pretending to be cold or distant, it's about being grounded enough that you don't panic in pauses. When you sit in your own calm energy, without rushing to fill every gap with words or actions, something shifts in how others feel you. They start paying attention more closely because they can sense you are not trying to grab them, and that creates curiosity. Most people think attraction comes from doing more, but often it comes from doing less with intention. A soft smile, a slow response, a moment where you don't immediately explain yourself. These small things create depth in perception. He starts to notice not just what you say, but how you exist. And that difference stays in his mind longer than any conversation. Don't rush past this part because this is where emotional presence becomes stronger than physical presence. Now think about the power of almost moments, the kind of moments that never fully complete. Not everything needs to land fully to be remembered. In fact, the mind holds on tighter to things that feel unfinished. A look that lasts a second longer, a conversation that stops right before it peaks, a feeling that builds but doesn't immediately resolve. These are the moments that stay alive in memory because the mind keeps trying to finish them. And when the mind keeps working, so does the attachment. If everything is given instantly, there is nothing left to imagine. But when something is left open just slightly, it continues to live inside his thoughts long after the moment ends. Even a simple, playful line can create this effect when it suggests more without explaining everything. The idea is not to play games, but to understand timing, space, and emotional pacing. Because desire often grows strongest in what is not fully completed. Stay with me because what comes next is about how thoughts replace presence. Attraction doesn't only live in physical moments, it grows in imagination. What he thinks about you when you are not there becomes more powerful than what happens when you are. The mind builds stories from small hints, small expressions, small emotional signals that were never fully explained, and those stories can grow on their own. You don't need to say everything, you just need to give enough for his thoughts to continue without you. A playful sentence, a soft pause, a meaningful look, these become fragments his mind replays later, and the more his mind replays, the more emotionally connected he feels, without realizing why. This is why mystery matters, not as confusion, but as space for imagination. When everything is too direct, the mind relaxes and moves on, but when something is slightly open, it stays active. And what stays active in the mind slowly turns into attachment. Keep listening because the final shift is about how stillness becomes the strongest signal of all. Never forget the power of what is left unfinished. It stays longer in the mind, it goes deeper than what is fully explained, and it keeps echoing even after the moment is gone. And now we move into something more subtle, not just keeping someone curious, but making them feel something real when they are with you. Not flattery, not imitation, but a deeper kind of awareness. Stay with this because this is where everything shifts. He doesn't need another person who simply reflects him back to himself. He doesn't grow from someone who only agrees, only praises, only mirrors what he already believes about who he is. That kind of connection feels good for a moment, then slowly becomes flat. What he actually responds to is the person who gently expands his view of himself, the one who doesn't just see the surface version, but notices the potential he has not stepped into yet. That is the difference between being liked and being remembered. Many people try to connect by matching energy, echoing words, repeating comfort. It works for a while, but it rarely transforms anything, because a reflection only repeats what already exists. But a different kind of presence can quietly challenge him to rise without pressure, without force. Imagine he is used to being understood only in terms of success, confidence, or the roles he plays in the world. Then he meets someone who doesn't just respond to those roles, but speaks to something deeper, something he doesn't fully express, not in judgment, not in criticism, but in calm recognition. That moment can feel unsettling in a quiet way, because it shows him a version of himself he hasn't fully lived yet. And stay with this, because this is not about performance. It is about perception. It is about how someone can see beyond the surface and make him reflect on who he is becoming, not just who he has been. Keep going, because this changes the entire direction of connection. When someone speaks from that place of deeper awareness, they stop being just part of his daily noise and become something he mentally returns to. Not because they tried harder, but because something in their words or presence stayed with him. There is a difference between being noticed and being felt, between being admired and being understood in a way that lingers. And in that space, attraction is no longer just about reactions, it becomes about meaning. A person who only reflects confidence or agrees with everything is easy to forget once the moment passes. But someone who quietly speaks to the parts he hasn't fully expressed creates a different kind of impact. It is not about fixing him or analyzing him, but about seeing him with a clarity that feels rare. That kind of interaction can stay in his thoughts long after the conversation ends. Because the mind keeps returning to what feels slightly deeper than usual, something it cannot fully categorize. And that is where real connection starts to form, not in loud moments, but in subtle ones that feel honest and slightly unexpected. Stay with this thought, because now we move into something even more important, how respect becomes the real foundation of lasting attraction. Before any deeper pull can exist, there has to be a sense of respect. Without it, interest fades quickly, no matter how strong the initial spark feels. Attention alone is not enough to build anything lasting. Being wanted is not the same as being valued. Desire without respect is unstable. It rises fast and disappears just as fast. But when respect is present, everything changes. It slows things down. It adds weight to the connection. It makes someone think differently before they act. Respect is not created through effort or performance. It is communicated through how you carry yourself. Through consistency, through calm boundaries, through not losing yourself in trying to be chosen. When someone senses that you are not adjusting your entire presence to win approval, they start to respond differently. Not because you are pushing them away, but because you are not chasing them either. You are simply steady, and that steadiness creates a kind of grounding effect. It makes the interaction feel more real, less reactive. A person who respects themselves does not over-explain, does not over-pursue, and does not abandon their own center just to maintain attention. And that creates a shift in how they are experienced, not as someone trying to be enough, but as someone who already stands on solid ground. And from that place, everything else becomes more meaningful. Now we move into something deeper still, how words themselves can shape how someone feels long after they are spoken. Only you're not just passing information to him, you're handing him a small emotional doorway, a moment he can step into without even realizing it. a feeling that doesn't stay on the surface but slips deeper into his imagination like a quiet dream. Picture this kind of message sent late at night. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced, just something soft like, "It's the kind of night where your hoodie would be around my shoulders and my feet would be resting in your lap." Simple words, but they don't stay simple in his mind. They build a scene, and suddenly he is not just reading a text, he is inside a moment with you. That's the shift. He doesn't just think about you, he starts to feel your presence even when you are not there. This is not about over-explaining feelings or trying to prove anything. It's about suggesting, not stating, about painting a small emotional picture and letting his mind complete the rest. Because the human mind doesn't hold on tightly to explanations, it holds on to experiences it can imagine. And when you learn to speak like this, you stop being just a person he talks to and start becoming a feeling he revisits, something he doesn't fully finish in his head. And that unfinished feeling is exactly what keeps attention alive. Keep watching, because this goes even deeper when we talk about what truly stays after every word disappears. Now we move beyond words completely and into something more powerful, something most people feel but rarely understand clearly: your energy. Not what you say, not what you type, not even how you look, but what you carry when you enter a space or even when you are simply present in someone's mind. You can learn the right phrases, the perfect timing, the smoothest way to respond, but none of it holds weight if your inner state doesn't match what you are trying to express. Energy is never hidden. It shows up before effort does. You have felt this before, meeting someone who says very little, yet something about them stays in your awareness long after they leave. That is not words, that is presence, that is alignment. When a woman is grounded in herself, she doesn't move from fear or pressure. She doesn't overreach for validation or bend herself into something she is not. Instead, she stands in a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. And that changes how she is experienced, because people don't only respond to actions, they respond to the emotional atmosphere those actions come from. If you believe you are not enough, it will show in how you reach for attention. If you believe love must be earned, it will show in how you perform for it. But when you begin to feel that you are already enough as you are, something shifts. You stop chasing, you start expressing, and that expression feels different to everyone around you. It is not louder, it is clearer. It is not forced, it is steady. And that steadiness is what makes you unforgettable, in a way that cannot be easily described, only felt. So return to that center inside you again and again, because that is where real influence begins. Stay with this feeling, because this is where everything finally comes together. You don't need to overwork your presence or turn yourself into something you're not just to be noticed. The real shift happens when you stop reaching outward for validation and start coming back inward to your own center. Because the moment you are fully in yourself, something changes in how you are felt by others. You are no longer chasing attention, you are generating it without effort. Think about how often people try to do more, say more, explain more, just to keep someone interested. But that energy often comes from fear, not strength, and fear always leaks. It shows in timing, in tone, in how quickly you respond, in how much you try to hold the moment together. Now imagine the opposite, a woman who is not rushing to prove anything. She is present, but not pressed, calm, but not empty, engaged, but not dependent on the outcome. That kind of energy doesn't demand attention, it holds it. And people feel it instantly, even if they cannot explain it. They sense something steady, something grounded, something that does not collapse under uncertainty. That is what creates impact, not perfection, not performance, presence. And when presence is real, it changes the entire emotional field around you. He doesn't just hear your words, he feels the state they are coming from. And that is what stays with him long after the moment is gone. Stay here with this, because this is where most people completely miss the real source of attraction. Because attraction is not just built in actions, it is built in how you are experienced internally by someone else. You can say the right things, send the right messages, even create the right moments, but if your inner state is unstable, it will always show through in small ways. On the other hand, when you are aligned with yourself, even simple words carry weight, even silence feels intentional, even distance does not break the connection, because your energy does not disappear when you are not speaking. This is why some people stay in your mind longer than others, not because they did more, but because something about how they made you feel was different. It wasn't forced, it wasn't loud, it wasn't constantly demanding attention. It simply existed in a steady way that your mind kept returning to. That is the real foundation of emotional impact. Not control, not strategy, not manipulation, but alignment. When you stop trying to become something for someone else and instead stand fully as yourself, you naturally become more memorable. Not because you are trying to be unforgettable, but because you are no longer diluting yourself to be accepted, and that difference is felt deeply. So return to that version of you that is not performing, not chasing, not adjusting out of fear, because from that place, connection becomes natural, not forced. And what is real does not need to be chased, it stays. When you stay in that grounded place, something subtle starts to shift in every interaction you have. You stop overthinking what to say next, you stop scanning for approval in every response, and you stop trying to engineer a reaction. Instead, you begin to exist more fully in the moment itself, and that changes everything. Because people don't only respond to your words, they respond to the emotional rhythm behind them. If you are anxious, it creates pressure. If you are chasing, it creates distance. But if you are steady, it creates curiosity. He starts to notice not just what you say, but how it feels to be around you. And that feeling becomes the part he remembers when you are not there. Not the exact conversation, not the exact message, but the emotional imprint it left behind. And this is where most people misunderstand connection. They think it is built by doing more, explaining more, giving more. But real depth often comes from restraint. From not filling every silence too quickly, from not rushing to define what is still forming, from allowing space for the other person to meet you halfway, instead of pulling everything toward yourself. That space is not emptiness, it is invitation. It gives the other person room to think, to feel, to lean in on their own, and when someone chooses to lean in instead of being pulled, their interest becomes more self-generated, and anything the mind participates in creating becomes harder to forget. So the focus is not on becoming louder or more expressive. It is on becoming more intentional with your energy. When you speak, you mean it. When you pause, it has weight. When you step back, it is not from fear, but from awareness. This kind of presence cannot be copied because it is not a technique. It is a state of being. And that state slowly changes how people relate to you. They begin to feel that you are not trying to win them. You are simply offering your presence, and they either meet it or they don't. That quiet confidence is what creates real emotional gravity. And over time, something interesting happens. The more you return to yourself, the less you need to chase anything outside of you. You are no longer trying to secure attention because you are no longer coming from a place of lack. You are simply expressing, interacting, and allowing space for things to unfold naturally. And in that space, the right kind of connection does not need to be forced. It forms on its own, not because you pushed it, but because you were fully present in it. And that is what makes it stay.